based things in that big data environment that you want to be aware of.
Congrats on getting to the end of the day one lecture. If you're taking this class for credit, make sure to switch to the other tab so that you get credit for it. Excited for you to check out the lab.
First off, we're going to be creating this DDL here. I'll explain how this DDL kind of works. We're just going to step through this. first. So, and we're actually going to be using this same table for their survivor analysis as well. And I think that will be very useful. You'll see here we have users growth accounting, and then we have user ID, obviously. Then we have first active date. So this is the first day that user showed up. This might not this is where cumulative table design can kind of mess up, where like if you start the accumulation on the wrong day, if you actually don't start at the beginning of history, then you might kind of mess up, where like if you start the accumulation on the wrong day, if you actually don't start at the beginning of history, then you might end up saying a user's first active date is the wrong day, and they were actually active much earlier, but like you just didn't start the accumulation then. And that's fine. That's like one of those things that like essentially that goes away over time. And then you have last active date is going to be the last day they were active. And then you have daily active state, weekly active state. So these are going to be our values that are going to be like growth accounting. You remember those like churned, resurrected, those kind of values. And then dates active and date. So dates active is we're keeping this around. This is very similar to, remember in the week 2 when we did the dates active stuff, we're going to be doing a very similar thing in this case. So you can go ahead and run that query. That's fine. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say with yesterday as, and then in this case, we're going to say select star from users growth accounting. And then we're going to say where date is equal to, and we're going to start, I want to just start with 2023-02-28. And then, so what we're going to do is we're essentially going to build out growth accounting for the month of March, because that's when I quit my job, and that's like when the data is going to be the most interesting. So when I have to quit my job, launch the company, all that kind of stuff. So then we have today. So we want to start with March 1st, and we're going to be building this off of the events table. So in this case, what we're going to say is we're going to say select from events where there's yeah, we want to use date trunk here. Date trunk day, then we have event time, and you want to cast this to a timestamp, and then this is equal to date 2023-03-01. And then in here, what we want to do is we want to look at essentially user ID, and then we want to have count 1, and this will be grouped by user ID. And this will give us essentially all the users for that day. And we can also have, we can also put like we can maybe group on both of these, because we want to have the time. We want this is like today date. So we can have both of those. So what we're going to start with here is this hopefully looks very similar to some of the other cumulative table designs that we were working on before. And you know, yesterday is going to have no data. Or wait, hold up, I need to do a quick delete, because my table will actually have data. Let me run this real quick. Okay, so now that's gone, and that'll be deleted. So now we have our yesterday and our today, very similar to our cumulative table before. So we can say select star from today T, full outer join yesterday Y. And then in this case, we have we're on T dot user ID equals Y dot user ID. So that makes sense so far. And so what we want to do is we want to do the first thing we want to do, right, is the coalesce here of like it'll be T dot user ID, Y dot user ID as user ID, because we want to get this to match, right? We want to, let me grab this guy again so we can, and then I'm just going to copy and we're going to comment him out though, so we can just have him for reference. Okay, so we have user ID, and then we have first active date. So in this case, we have two values here, right? So in this case, we have y dot first active date and t dot today date as first active date. And this is the order of these coalesces matters, and I'm just gonna I think you'll understand what I mean by this. And so okay, so this will make sense. Oh, this is gonna make sense here. So for this first one here, we have first active date. So essentially how it works is if yesterday has a value, great, we're gonna pick that. If not, we're going to pick today's, because that means it's a new user and they don't have a first active date that's earlier because they're new. Otherwise, we can pick whatever the one from yesterday was. Last active date is the opposite, where we say, okay, if they were active today, then that means that's the latest date that they were active. And if they're not active today, if today is null, then we want to pick whatever it was the last time they were active. So you see how like the ordering of the coalesce here makes a big difference. Then we have daily active state. Okay, so this is going to be a case when statement. I'm just going to essentially we're going to put this as daily active state, and and then we're going to have weekly active state as well, right? Weekly active state. I'm just going to put some case ones in here. I want to finish out the rest of this stuff real quick. So this date's active. I'm just going to pull from the query real quick because like that doesn't matter that much because we did that last time. That's going to be, I'm just going to grab both of these real quick and just kind of copy these from the query below from, okay. Okay, so this is essentially just going to build out out that array of dates. This will make sense. Oh, this is going to like it'll be t that's gone and it'll be deleted. So now we have our yesterday and our today, very similar to our cumulative table before. So we can say select star from today t, full outer join yesterday y, and then first case, which is going to be when yesterday is null and today is not null. That is the easiest case. So we're going to say when y.userID is null and t.userID is not null, then new. Because that means that they showed up today, they were active today, but they they weren't in the data set before. So that one's pretty easy. So they get more complicated as we go on here. So now let's talk about what about if they are resurrected? Then in that case, we need to see that their active date is more than 1 day. Like their last active date has to have a bigger difference than 1 day between today's date and their last active date. So if we say like y.last active date, and then in this case is going to be less than t dot, in this case we're going to say today date minus interval 1 day. So then this is resurrected, because what that means is there was a gap, right? That's going to be, or we have retained as well. So let's put retained in first, because I think retained makes more sense, where we say okay, if last active date is equal to today date minus 1, then it's retained. And then we have so we're getting there, right? We have new, we have retained, we have resurrected. So we need churned. Churned is going to be 1, and then we also have stale. Those are going to be the 2 that I think are going to be important here. So churned is going to be, so in that case, we're going to say when t dot today date is null. So this is this one's a little bit trickier because we don't have today date. So because it's null, because there's no daily data for that day. But we have, and then we can say and. So this is going to be his y dot lat. We're going to need to look at last active date, and this is going to be is equal to, and then there's actually y dot, but we have y dot date. So y dot date is like the partition date, and not the last active date. So we can use this essentially instead to see like what's going on here. So in this case, we can say, okay, if today is null and the last active date is equal to the date, then this is going to be, what try to say here? This is going to be churn. And then the only other thing that's possible is stale. And then let's make this like an empty string for now. So I'm going to run this query, and it's going to be like very, okay. Oh yeah, we got to cast. We got to cast these. Got to cast this as text because the types are weird. Okay, there we go. So now we have our user ID, we have our first active date, we have our last active date. Oh, well, we have user IDs that are null. Oh, great. Let's actually filter those guys out. We can say and user ID is not null. That's like weird. Okay, there we go. So you'll, and then you have the most. Then we have today. So we want to start with March 1st. And we're going to be building this off of the events table. So in this case, we'll trunk 0301. Great. Let's actually filter those guys out. We can say and user ID is not null. That's like weird. Okay, there we go. So you'll see, okay, you'll see essentially everyone here is going to be daily active, like always. You'll see, like, or the daily active is going to be new, but that's because we haven't started the accumulation yet. So essentially what this means is we're saying this is the beginning of time, and every user that's active on this day, that's their first day. And some of these users might have been active before, and so that's where, like, when you pick where you start the accumulation matters a lot. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want want to do like 100 or 200, because Tech Creator, I guess my platform, if we wanted to actually do this the right way, we would need to run this starting in 2019, and I would need to run this query like 1,000 times to have it be absolutely perfect. But I'm not going to do that because we have 30 minutes. So we're just going to assume that everyone who started on March 1st, that they are new users, even if they're not actually new. So in this case, we only need one more thing here. All right, we're going to need insert into users growth accounting. So one of the best things about growth accounting, right, is this first statement is easy. It's the same. That one's easy. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab these two. And I think this will also be not too crazy. So for retained, in this case, we essentially, like, it's not an equal to for retained, because essentially what it means is that we want to see if they were active at any point in the last 7 days. So in this case, we essentially want to say if instead of equal to here, we're going to say greater than or equal to. And then instead of today date, we want this to be y.date, right? Because the reason why this needs to be y.date instead of today date is because they might not be active today. And so we want to use y.date, and that will be our comparison value. And then, but this is going to be -7. So this will give us our retained. But the good news is resurrected is going to be, we do use today date for resurrected. So let's actually put this one above because I think that makes more sense. So for resurrected, we have last active date. And then, so that means that they have to have been active. The last time they were active needs to be more than 7 days ago because they needed to have churned. So that means that this one's pretty straightforward, right? So we just say, okay, their last active date was 7 days ago or more, and then that means that they were resurrected. And then it has to be more, this is more than 7 days because this is a strictly less than, right? And then if it wasn't, then they're retained. Then we have the ones that get a little bit more complicated here, right? So then we have churn. Churned is going to be next, right? And because we have the other ones already done here. So in the case of churn, we're going to want to do, okay, so we have when y dot last active date is, okay, this is going to be a less than. Let me think about this because, hold up, I have that one. This one, like this is where like I spent a little bit of time on this. So let me just grab this. Oh yeah, this is where for, that's how it's done. That makes sense. So for churned, you actually have to have why is that like, oh, there's a, that's why. Okay. So churned, you actually have this to have the t dot today date is null because you have to have that check because they can't be active today, and then the last time they were active needs to be longer than this many days ago, and then but it needs to be greater than. Wait a minute, I think actually this is not quite right because this is going to catch this isn't going to catch stale because it needs to be, okay, the last active date was more than 7 days ago. No, it has to be equal. This is actually this is an equal sign, right? Because that means it has to be exactly 7 days ago, because that means that they're churning today, and then yeah, that makes sense to me. All right, because that means that like they were and then otherwise they're stale. That's it. This is actually an equal sign here because that's that one moment in time. And so, and then we have an else here, and we have stale. So now this is our weekly active state. obviously for the first run, everything is new. So, and the thing that is crazy for weekly active is that for the first 7 days is that wait a minute. Ooh, that's actually another thing we want to be careful about here because resurrected and retained here. Oh, retained does actually have to go above, or there needs to be another condition. And the reason for that is because retained and oh wait, no, it doesn't matter because this today date is going to be well, yeah, it actually doesn't matter. Never mind. I thought my date logic there was a little bit off, and the conditions needed to be cascaded away. No, but it's fine. So those actually do not overlap. So I'm pretty sure this is going to work. So essentially, you see how like you have like this like kind of crazy like date math that you need to do. This is actually not the way that they do it at Facebook. They actually the way they do it is with bit math. So you know like the date list int and the bit count and all those things where they shift the bits over. If you have the date list for yesterday and the date list for today and how they shifted, you have like what the value is today, and then you have so you have the 2 date lists, and then you can compare the bits on either side. You could actually get all of these different states a lot easier. That is like the more efficient way to do it. I wanted to show how you can do things a bunch of different ways though, because like that doesn't matter quite as much in these cases. So what we're gonna do is we are going to we're gonna run this. And make sure in the code that I gave you guys for churned, this was like a less than. Make sure you change that to an equal. Well, that was a mistake. Okay, so that ran. And so now what we want to do is we want to just essentially change this to move everything up a date. So it's the same sort of thing where you change the 2 dates and then you run the query again. Okay, so let's just go ahead and query this real quick so we can say. Like select star from users growth accounting where date is equal to date 2023-03-02. We have the second. Okay, so you'll see here. So you see this user here is in this. It makes sense, right? So he's retained because he was active on both days, daily retained. And so let's find there's going to be some users here who are not retained though. Let's say and daily active state equals churned, because there's going to be people who like for daily active, right? There we go. So you'll see like these are people who were just active on the first, but they were not active on the second. But that doesn't mean that they're not weekly active, because they're still weekly active for the next 7 days. And so they're still weekly active, but now they have churned for the daily active. So you'll see how now like we can see these 2 different ways that these churn. So you'll see daily active, actually the state here will change a lot more frequently because it needs to be tested essentially on a daily basis, whereas the weekly one gets tested more on like a weekly basis, so it doesn't change quite as quickly. So like essentially you're going to get a lot more retains for the first like 7 days, right, of the weekly state. So let's go ahead and just quickly run this a bunch more times. Actually, I realize I don't need to do that. I can just click the run. Yeah, run the insert into. Then we can do 3 and 4 and 4 and 5 and 5 and 6 and 6 and 7 and then let's do 7 and 8. And then we'll just go do one more. Let's go to the 8th, because the 8th will be where we start to see a drop off on the or we'll do the 9th so that we can guarantee to see a drop off here. Okay, cool. So now we have data all the way through to the 9th. And let's go ahead and look at that. Let's look at the 9th here. So we should see some users who have like dropped off. Okay, there we go. So you see we have some like stale users, and then we have like, oh, look, this guy, he's retained, right? Because he came back, right? Or he's just, this person's like active every single freaking day. That's cool. But you'll see that there are some people who churned here because they were active on the 8th but not on the 9th. So, well, let's do a little group by here, because maybe, is there a bug? I don't think there's a bug, but it just feels like there's an awful lot of retains there. Oh, it's still just new and retained? Okay, well, I guess there is a bug here. For this is where last active date is greater than or equal to y.date minus 7 days is retained. That seems right, though, because that means that they weren't active. How is it like they are all retained, though? Hold up. Because this minus interval, okay, in here we have retained is, it's saying it's y.active date is, and it's saying it has to be, but this is with today date, but this today date is null. It can be null, and that's fine. Interesting, because okay, so you have the retained, and then and today date is null. That's how, because I got this to work. I definitely got this to work. This is wild that this is like a little bit off, just a little bit off. That's what, like, one of those things about these queries that's like wild, is that they can be just slightly off, where so because if you subtract 7 from this, and then the last active date is greater than or equal to that minus 7. Because, okay, hold up. Because if we query this and we just say select star, right, and look at the data here, because we should have like some data here that is a little bit off, right? Because let's see, is first, okay, and then we can say and last active date equals date 2023-0301. So we're just going to do a little bit of troubleshooting here real quick, see what's going on. So you see, okay, there are users in here that we have that were essentially only active on the 1st. See, and then this is weird, because the why is it getting hit? Like, why is this retained? That doesn't make any sense, because this is this would be where last active date is greater than or equal to date minus 7, which would mean that the 1st is greater than the 2nd, which is, you're saying for here where yeah, because, well, like these should all be stale, because these are not active on, these have only been active on the 1st, right? And this is now the 9th, right? This is for the 9th, and that's what I'm saying, is that like this y.date here is the 9th, like that's okay, that's wild. Okay, anyways, there is a bug here that I think what I'm gonna do here, because I want to give time for the rest of the lab here, is there's a small bug on the kind of the way that this is working, because essentially this is saying this is like, because wait a minute, because somehow this condition is being triggered every single time. Like, that's so weird. But what I'm gonna do is like I want to put a cap on this because the whole idea here is I know that the daily active state is working, and that's what matters for the rest of the class, and we can see what's going on. There must be a small bug with these conditions here, but the daily active state is working the way we expect because it's simpler. And the idea here, right, is now you can kind of see like if we go ahead and we say date, and then we say daily active state, and we say count one. And then we can say group by date, weekly, and then daily active state. We run this query. You can see, okay, we can see when people showed up. You'll see, and when people, okay, so stale is like all the people who like churned out and they never came back. But okay, you'll see on there was 3,000 new users who showed up on the 3rd, right? And it was really hard for me to retain daily active users essentially. So there was 287 people who came back on the 4th, right? And like some people ended up coming back like after churning a little bit, but like for the most part they like are mostly stale now. Anyways, that's kind of the idea for growth accounting here. Now what I want to show y'all is how you can use this with first active state to show y'all how to look at retention analysis for cohorts. So in this case, what I want to do is first we're just going to say select star from users growth accounting, and we're going to say where first active date equals date, and we're going to use 2023-03-01. So we're going to look at this group of users. So you'll see we have a weird number of users. There's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of users here that essentially were here. Now what we can do is let's go ahead and look at this over time. So if we look at date and count, you'll see if we group here, group by date, you see how it's always the same? It's always 171, which is like kind of what we would expect. So if we have 100, so this is a cohort of 171 users. That's the total number of users in this cohort. But what we can see is we can say, what if we say count case when daily active state equals, or we can say daily active state in, and we're going to say retained, resurrected, or new, then one end. So let's look at this. I think this will kind of give a pretty good idea here. So if we sort on date here, you'll see this is essentially that J curve that I was talking about. So we can, it's not too crazy to build this out, actually, like especially if you already do the growth accounting piece of it. So what we can do, right, is we have our counts, and then let's go ahead and say this is as number active. And then what we want to do is we want to have one more here. Let's do a percent, right? So we have this divided by count one. We got to cast this though, otherwise it's going to give. This is cast. Cast. This is as real. What? Why is it mad? Aggregation calls are not allowed here. Why not? This query looks like that. Like, okay, 1 second. This looks fine to me. Oh, it doesn't like oh, it's because there's, I think I missed no, that looks right. Count, case when, cast is real, divide. But you can't divide? Hold it, will it give it to me this way? Okay. Case when in, okay, fine. We only care about the percent anyways, so we can move him and we'll just divide here. Because it's probably gonna, okay, there must have been I must have done something weird, but this looks like it's working. Okay, so now this is gonna work. And you'll see this is, let's say this is percent active. Okay. Okay, so we have our percent active. And then one of the things that's important here, though, is we actually don't this is working great for one cohort, but this is not that good for all the cohorts. So what we can do, right, is we want to say date minus first active date as days since sign up, or days since we'll say days since first active. We'll say that, and you'll see if we do. Oh, we got a group on that. So this is going to give us that kind of survivor analysis a little bit. So you'll see, okay, the first day, they are great, right? It's exactly 1. And then as things go on, things get a little bit different. So one of the things that's really cool, though, is now we can actually greatly expand the cohorts here, because we can actually remove this filter condition. And now this is actually going to give us, okay, so now we have a bunch of users who, some of them, some cohorts are bigger than others because we've had more data, right? And you'll see, but one of the things you'll notice is, it's sort on days since active here. So you'll see days since first active, we have 100% of people, which is exactly what we're expecting. You remember that chart where it's like a curve and it all starts at 100% and then it slowly goes down? And so you'll see that really we only these last 2 days we don't want to care about as much because there's not enough data for these 2 days. Or because we need to load more data in, because you see the number of users here is not very high, but for these other days we have a lot of users. So you'll see that okay, for first day it looks like it goes 100%, then 5%, and then it kind of stabilizes at about 2%. So it seems like my retention rate for my website is about 2% of people come back, which, I don't know, that's it's probably better now. I mean, this is obviously 6 months ago, so things have changed quite a bit. But this is the idea behind how to do this, right? And for example, let me just show you how powerful this actually is, though, right? So isn't there there's a way to do this where can we do there's got to be a way to do a month, right? Or got to be a way to so you can add other columns into the table, right? Or you can group on other dimensions of the cohort or of the users in that cohort, so that you can see oh, do users who sign up on Wednesday versus Monday or whatever, they have isn't there date part? Okay, so extract day of week, and then this is going to be from first active date as day of week. And then we group on that as well. And you'll see in this case, this is going to give us a different perspective. So still first day looking great, right? And then you can kind of see, okay, it looks like Wednesday. It's Wednesday's looking pretty fire, 13%, but it's also not enough data in some regards as well, right? So you can see what day of the week, like you can kind of compare these like day of the week, like, and you can see how this could be like a nice line chart of like, oh, this day of the week is better than that day of the week, and then you can kind of use that to your advantage to like optimize your ad campaigns, stuff like that. So just letting y'all know, I don't think we're gonna have time for the kind of the rolling window function stuff because we only have like 4 or 5 minutes left for today's lab. I was a little bit ambitious on how much content to cover here. I covered a little bit too much in the presentation, but I think that's pretty much it for what I was planning to cover today.
Congrats on getting to the end of the day one lab. If you're taking this class for credit, make sure to switch over to the other tab so you can get credit for the day two